When I start one of these builds like this, I never know how far it's actually gonna go. The first video thumbnail said right on it, come follow me down the rabbit hole. Well, that's exactly where I am right now. So much goes into these things. I've been working on this project for 3.5 months now, and we're finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm trying to wrap up some of these last minute things, so I want to get this turf put in this boat. This switch panel gave me a run for my money, tested my patience. I've worked on this thing 3 times already, and here I am now, redoing it. Had to make a recessed pan to set the switches in just a little bit farther. This pan was a little different than some of the others because the switch was already installed. All the wires were already there. So I left a slot in this one so I could slide it over them. Came back and finished it off with a piece later. This is a little nerve-wracking right here. Cutting through this fresh paint job. I got a rag in my hand, it's got water on it. I'll cut a little bit, cool a little bit. I'm trying to keep it from bubbling up. I don't want the metal to get too hot. Clean all the burrs off the inside of this hole. Make sure my switch panel is gonna fit in here. Nobody knows how to do everything perfect, especially not the first try. 99% of the things that I do, I know how to do because I've already found a bunch of ways that didn't work. This entire build has pretty much been built on the fly. That's kind of how I like to do things. I just work my way through it, and if I need a piece, I just make it. That's the fun in it, the thrill for me. Obviously, I have a general idea of what I want to do, and I'm limited by the space in the boat. But I'm the type of person that I can picture things that aren't there. When I saw this boat as an empty hull, I knew exactly how I was going to lay it out, and I knew where things were going to fit, and I just had an idea. And once I saw the turf, I could just picture the whole finished build. I mean, I've been fabricating for 20 years, so I look at things and just pick them apart and know how they're built. Now right here, I had to do another thing I didn't really want to do. I had to cut down this trolling motor bracket mount that I welded up on the front of this hull. I did not have the correct angle on it, and it was just messing up my graph bridge, my placement. It just wasn't going to fit. So I cooled this while I cut it at the same time, and I'm actually really happy with the way it turned out. I'm glad that I went this route. I was thinking about making a different graph bridge, and I really wanted to use the graph bridge that I already had made, not just because it's sick, but for the sake of time. All right, so this trolling motor bracket that I made was really baffling me, and I was thinking about moving the recessed foot pedal tray back. I didn't really want to do that because then this is just going to be dead space up here. So I decided I was going to go ahead and cut it. Now this is how I should have done this originally. Honestly, I would have just stopped here and brought it from here across because you can see the bolts for it are right there. So they're hitting like right here. It's going to work out perfectly. It was pretty minimal evasive the way I cut it. I cooled it at the same time with a rag so it wouldn't bubble up any of this paint or anything. And it really doesn't look bad. I mean, it's just a face of it where you can see the aluminum on it. But I've got some of this trim right here. It's like a black rubber trim. But I was thinking I might just take some of this, you know, and just run it up over this lip right here. I can put that all the way around it. Might look kind of cool on there. I'll definitely finish it off. I'm gonna cut some pieces and make them fit up there perfectly before I install this trolling motor. But look, now with that out, it allows me to tuck this graph bridge all the way up here in the face. I'm gonna sit just about like that. That's what I wanted originally, and it's gonna be sick. Now it's exactly what we need. It's almost back flush with this recessed foot pedal tray. His graph can mount here, and he'll still have plenty of room to get his foot and leg up here and work this trolling motor. The way that his trolling motor cable tucks up underneath the side and with the head at this angle right here, I've already deployed it and stowed it a couple of times, but it's going to work perfectly. It's going to slide right past this graph bridge. He's got a 10-inch Garmin going up here on the top of this. It doesn't overhang past this. And this is actually farther away from the graph than up on this front deck of the King Neptune build. I'm pretty positive that this is going to work out perfectly fine. I'm going to go ahead and get this trolling motor installed permanently, and then I'm going to get on to something else. Let's get back to work. just got the jack plate put onto the boat and put the outboard motor on it to see how this thing sits. Now, this is a pain in the butt. Every time I make one of these, I end up making them wrong. I have to alter them. The only reason that I don't have to alter them is if you have power, tilt, and trim. A lot of these guys don't have power, tilt, and trim just because it's heavier, it's more expensive, and you don't necessarily need it if your jack plate is perfect. It puts a little bit more pressure on me, but we're gonna get this thing right. As you can see, this thing looks sick. I mean, I got this towel up here just so I don't scratch this paint up until I get done, because this piece is eventually going to be getting painted. Let me flip this camera around and show you what we got. All right, this is a custom built jack plate. This thing is made out of 3/16 aluminum diamond plate. And the way I do these, I bend them up like a channel, and then I bend these flanges back towards the inside. That allows me to put the bolts inside of there, and it hides them. So you don't see anything on the outside. It looks nice and smooth. Now, obviously, I got a rag in here because I'm trying to protect this paint job until I get this thing exactly the way I want it. I'm gonna take it off, paint it, and when I permanently install it, I'm gonna have some sealant and stuff up inside of these bolts. But let me show you what's going on with this thing. So the degree of this, I kept the same as the degree of the transom. And it's very close for this outboard motor right here. What makes that an issue with this motor, because it doesn't have power, tilt, and trim. So you're very limited into where you can set this thing. And as you can see, it's all the way back in the farthest section it could go in. So really, I'd like to have this thing sucked in a little bit more at the top. That way you'd have adjustment in both directions. But the way it's sitting is pretty good as being parallel with the bottom of this hull. Now, the way that I set these up, the bottom of this cavitation plate right here, you want this to be flush with the bottom of your boat if you want to be in the middle. Now, when I put this plate up here, this angle, and stretch this out as a straight edge, the bottom of this cavitation plate, it was actually sitting 1.5 inches below the bottom of the boat. Now, if you get it up to where it's flush, you will be like the minivan. And then if you want to go with the sports car, you want to bring it up higher. I mean, basically, the higher out of the water you take this thing, the faster it's going to be, but you're going to lose a little bit of handling because it doesn't sit down deep enough into the water to catch on the turns. So in reality, if you're just running straight, you could take this thing about 3.5 inches above the bottom of your boat, and that's going to put you way up here. You're going to get a lot of top end. You're not going to be able to turn for shit. So what I like to do is kind of meet in the middle of the minivan and the sports car. So I'm going to go 1.5 inches above the bottom of the boat right here. So right now it's 1.5 inches low. So I've got to bring this up 3 inches up here. That'll put him right into the sweet zone. I think that's where you can maximize this motor. And I think he'll get pretty good speeds out of it. I'm predicting that this boat's probably going to run at least 24, maybe 25, 26, we'll see. And you guys think I'm crazy, but go look at the tracker bill. That thing was running 25 miles an hour all day long. I'm gonna take these bolts out of here. Obviously, I got it bolted in on the back side of this. I only put 2 in there just for staging purposes. And I'm gonna drill another hole into this piece. It's gonna be down a little bit lower, about 3 inches. That's gonna make this stick way above the top of this transom. So I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna cut this down. Just like I did on the King Neptune build. It's gonna look sick, it's gonna be strong, and it's gonna make this exactly what we need it to be. Let's get back to work. right, so I got that hole up underneath this front bow, underneath the trolling motor mount, and I ran my cables through there. Now I did that because I want to finish up this black box that I put in here, and I needed to run the cable that's going to hook up to the graph for the live scope, and I also needed to run the cable from the transducer that's going on to this trolling motor up, down through the deck. Now, a lot of times I'll run those through a hole in the recessed foot pedal tray, and I didn't really want to put an extra hole in there. It's kind of cool the way it's hidden up underneath here, and once I get it all tightened up, I'll show you exactly how that works. But I am gonna have to put one hole inside of this foot pedal tray. I gotta run the power in there. And I try to keep that power as far away from all the other equipment as possible, all the other cables, everything, because there's a lot of power going through that. 24 volts, running this trolling motor, and you can get interference on some of your electronics. So I just do the best I can to keep them far away. So with that one being by itself to the foot pedal tray, then I have all the other cables run up underneath this mount over here. So I wanted to get that installed because I want to get this trolling motor installed on here permanently. I want to run both of the transducers that I'm putting on this thing. I have one for the live scope, and then I have one for the 56. I'm going to install both those on here. Then I'm going to run the wires up the trolling motor and back down around the side. But I wanted to get that done and make sure it would deploy and stow before I made it permanent. And then I was stuck in that position when I put my graph bridge in. But I already tried it. It worked perfect. So I'm going to put this thing in here permanently. Let's get back to work. All right, guys, so check this thing out. This thing is sick, super custom. It's gonna sit up here just like that. I'm gonna put a coat of paint on it, but I had to alter this thing. It's heavy duty, it's perfect. I mean, he could not have got a better jack plate for this Yamaha motor on this 14-foot well built. Let me show you what I did to it. So I had to taper this back a little bit right here. It just wasn't gonna be perfect. It's just sitting back like this. So what I did was I cut from nothing to about 3/4 of an inch up here. And then I pushed this in. I couldn't bend this because I was at home. I don't have my big machinery and stuff. So I had to come back and I cut through this about halfway. And that was just like a relief cut. Then I just took it and I could bend it by hand. I got it exactly where I needed it. I tacked it up, tried it, and it works perfect. But look at this thing. This top piece right here, this is a piece of 2 by 3 by 1/4 inch rectangular tubing. I welded it in here, welded all around both of these sides right here, and I welded up underneath the backside. Now, this didn't come all the way through. This bend line, that's just where I had cut my relief cut, but I did weld it across the face. Now, I want to build these. I'd love to build a ton of these. It's kind of a catch-22 because I don't know the regulations, and I'd hate to sell somebody one of these and then put like a 50 or 75 horsepower outboard on it, thing break or whatever, and then they want to blame me. So that's why I don't sell these. I'm going to try to see if I can come up with some way to market some of them and put like 20 horsepower limits on them, but I'm no engineer. I'm pretty sure that this thing could easily hold a 75 horsepower motor though. I mean, this thing is heavy duty. And if you wanted to use one of those mini jackers, you wouldn't have this much of an offset. You definitely wouldn't have this height on here. It's just not something you can get out of one of those. Now, if you want to use one of the hydraulic jack plates, yeah, those are sick. And then you can get a whole lot of range of motion out of them. The only issue is those things are expensive. And if you want to get one of the nice ones, you're probably gonna be looking at spending at least $1,000 on it, if not a little bit more. So this works out perfectly. If I had to build one of these, I'd probably have to charge somebody like $500 or $600 just because it was a lot of work. And if I had it set out to where I could just bang it out real quick, it'd be a whole lot cheaper. But I like to put these on all of the big builds that I do just because it makes a humongous difference with the outboard. This thing's gonna run fast, it's gonna handle pretty good, and I'm excited to see what it does. I'm gonna clean this thing up really good. I'm gonna put a coat of paint on it. It does look pretty sick being in the aluminum color, but it's just not gonna match the whole build. So I'm gonna clean this up, probably paint this black. I'm gonna put you guys back in the time lapse, try to get this taken care of, and we'll get on to something else. Let's get back to work. right, guys, so I have slowly been chipping away at little pieces of this puzzle to try to wrap up all of this electrical, and I am finally finished. I want to show you guys this boat, let you get one more look at all the framework before I put all the hatches and metalwork in there and start the turf. So check it out, man. This thing looks killer. I love the way these cup holders turned out in these little back corner panels. They're out of the way, and I think it's just sick, man. It looks really cool. Only hatches I have in here is the rod locker hatch and the electrical panel hatch. I wanted to make sure everything else was finished up before I put all this metal work in here. But I'm going to give you all a little once over so you can see what this thing looks like, man. It looks so good. All these wires, everything's nice and neat. Got our battery tender. Our gas tank has a tray that it sits in. These are the only wires I haven't pulled up tight yet. That's because after I get this metal in here, then I'm going to attach this cable for this transducer, and I'll suck all that tight at that point. But check out these batteries. Wiring looks really good up inside of there. Everything is nice and neat. Look at this. Wow. Lots of wires, lots of stuff going on. But everything has its place. And once this hatch drops in here, it's going to cover, down here about an inch. You won't be able to see any of these wires in here. So stoked to be done with all this electrical, man. So much stuff. Whole front's nice and cleaned up. Pan optics box is installed. Live well is completed. You can see how I did these right here. This has a male and a female spade connector on it. And what he can do is he can get another one of these cartridges for these pumps right here. And he can go ahead and connect the male end to it. And then if one of these dies on him while he's out in the water, all he's got to do is twist it out of this little red housing. Then he can pop these apart and snap them right back together. And he'll be good as new. It's perfect, man. I'm stoked that this is finished up. Got the whole front finished up. Got transducer up on the bottom of the trolling motor. Got his live scope transducer. All the rest of the cables are down here. This is the power for his graph, the 106. This is the extra power wire that I ran for him for his graph that he's going to put on the face of the dual mount graph bridge. All these wires are going to come out from this hole up inside of here. And I just kind of got them draped up and over the front of this trolling motor. Everything's just sitting right here because literally that foot pedal tray and the graph bridge will be the last thing that I install. I just need to make sure that all the wires and everything are ran for it. I can tighten those up and I'll be able to pull those up through the foot pedal tray and get everything nice and neat. This rod locker is sick, man. I love this hatch over here. The color of it is so cool. Awesome. Man, it feels good to be at this stage of the game. All that electrical will just drain you. It is very involved. Everything has to be perfect. So I'm glad that that's over with. Now it's time for me to start putting all this metal in here. I got to come back and drop in all the hatches, rivet all those down. I got all these little pieces that are fillers and stuff to finish this thing out. I'm going to get all that put in here right now. It's time for me to get busy because this boat is getting wrapped tomorrow. I'm dropping it off before I go to work at 6:30 in the morning, and hopefully I'm going to be picking it up in 2 days. I'm going to put all this metal work in here, and I'm going to start turfing this thing. I'd like to get at least 2 sheets in here before I have to drop it off tomorrow. That way when I get it back, all I got to do is finish up the turf. I got the jack plate. That thing turned out killer. I'm going to bolt that up, put the outboard on it, and then I just got to put the graphs in. He's got one of those balls out mounts. It's going to go on the side with a swing arm. I just got that one, the graph bridge up front. This thing's going to be wrapped up super quick, man. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what this wrap looks like. I'm going to put you guys back on the time lapse. I'm going to put all the metal in this boat, and then I'll give you a walkthrough of what it looks like. Let's get back to work. All right, so I got all the metal work in there. Unfortunately, I ran out of rivets. I thought I had an extra bag at home. I guess I didn't. So there's a couple pieces on the front deck and the live well hatch that are not riveted down. It's okay. We'll pull them out. I gotta take this thing tomorrow morning, drop it off for the wrap. You can really get a feel for it though. I mean, this thing is dope. I can't wait until it's done. The best part about it is that everything underneath this deck is already completely finished. Now, I was gonna incorporate the turf and everything into this video, but the bottom line is the boat's about to leave to get wrapped. It's gonna be gone for a couple of days, and I wanna finish editing this video and go ahead and drop it to you guys. It might add an extra video into this series, or I might just combine the turf in the final reveal video of the wrap. We'll see what happens. I appreciate you guys watching. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time. I gotta get back to work.